Amco Embassy Film, and here we began The Fog. I'm John Carpenter, and sitting next to me is Debra Hill. And as I recall, Debra, it was your idea to put this Edgar Allan Poe quote on this movie, is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream. And that was near the end of post-production when we were still trying to make this movie work. Debra and I made this movie back in 1979, and it was released, and it was somewhat successful at the time. But originally, this was a movie that we made once and then had to remake it because it didn't work. And here we are with John Houseman. He's beginning to tell a little ghost story to these kids. Do you remember where we shot this?
We shot it on the soundstage over at, what was that called there on
Producers?
Melrose.
Was it Producers or
Yeah.
Raleigh Studios?
We shot this on a soundstage. It was supposed to take place outside, like on a beach, and so we just recreated it. And those are my friend Nancy Jacoby's children, Laurie and Lindsay Arendt.
100 years ago, on the 21st of...
We were traveling in 1977 in England. We went to see Stonehenge, and I recall at the time I kind of came up with the idea of having something come out of the fog. And it was a very, very thin idea at the time, and we developed it into the screenplay. We had a two-picture deal with Amco Embassy, and this was the first of two, the second being Escape from New York. John Houseman worked one day telling the story. As I recall, he blew his line several times.
Yeah, I can remember that fog bank when we were in England. I mean, it was just sort of sitting on the horizon, way past Stonehenge. And you said to me, "What if there's something in that fog? Wouldn't that be scary?" And that's how it sort of evolved.
What we wanted to do in this movie, as opposed to the film we'd made the year before, Halloween, we wanted to make an old-fashioned ghost story and kind of go back to what you're seeing at this moment, which is John Houseman sitting over a campfire telling a story to kids. And there's Ty Mitchell, who plays Adrienne's son in the movie. He's a sweet kid. Right now, I understand he's grown up and trying to pursue a career in acting. Dean Cundy shot this movie, and as usual, his lighting is beautiful and appropriate for the mood. We shot it again in Panavision, widescreen, 2:3:5:1 aspect ratio.
Grandfathers, that when the fog returns to Antonio Bay, the men at the bottom of the sea, out in the water by Spivey Point, will rise up.
Pretty soon here we're going to crane up over John Houseman and reveal Antonio Bay, California, which is in reality Point Reyes, California, 40 miles north of San Francisco. We went on a scouting trip and found this beautiful area. Here we go. We're craning up on a soundstage, and in the middle here there'll be a dissolve to a location shot.
How we found the location, actually, was we took a trip up the coastline, up Route 1, and we stopped at all these different lighthouses along the way. And when we stopped at this particular lighthouse, it just was perched out on a cliff, and it looked very scary. It was really very, very beautiful and very, very moody. And so that's how we chose this particular area to make this picture. And it turned out that it's the second foggiest point in America, the first being Nantucket Island.
It's a Debra Hill production, and now we are panning down in, I believe this is over in Altadena. It's a church, which has been used for several films, and now you're going to see me appear basically with dark hair and more of it. I'm playing, there I go. I'm playing kind of the guy who cleans up the church. I had a chance in this movie to actually act with Hal Holbrook in a scene, and I'm terrible. So I stopped doing roles in movies after this, except for helicopter pilots and walk-ons.
And body bags.
That's true, but I would play the dead guy. So here I come into our soundstage, and Hal Holbrook is having a little something to drink, and I deliver my lines. This was one of the most terrifying moments in my life, having to deliver these lines to an accomplished actor like Hal. Would you like something to keep you? And the crew was all laughing at me. My
you look
God, I
pretty
was
good.
young. Oh,
You
thank
look
you very
great.
much. Thank you very much.
Why don't you come in and
What was the budget of this film, Deborah?
The budget of this picture was $1.1 million. So it's actually $900 and some thousand. And then we went back after we made this picture. We realized that there were problems with the scares, and we had to get a little bit more. I think a little gorier. I think at that time David Cronenberg had just come out with Scanners, and he had taken the genre to a point when we had to go back and reassess some of the scares in this movie. So we added a couple $100,000.
And we had a rock fall in foreground there, which is a cheap trick. And now we're into the discovery of the ancient book that holds the entire clue to the story. Basically, this beginning was originally scripted in a simpler way. Hal Holbrook discovers this ancient book that is basically a diary of what's happened. The original idea is based on something in reality that happened in California history. It was off the coast of Santa Barbara when a ship was sunk carrying lots of gold, and it was pirated and so forth. And we just added the kind of ghostly aspect. But after this, we began to cut to various places in the town where this strange disturbances and circumstances are beginning to happen this evening.
Well, really, what it is the 100th anniversary of an event that took place in this town, which was a crashing of a ship against these rocks when all these people died. And this is the 100th anniversary, and at midnight starts this curse.
And we're showing various shots of Point
I actually
Reyes.
shot these with
Yes,
my
you
little
did.
second unit. Ray Stella, my camera operator, and we went out with a flashlight and some and car lights. I had a station wagon, and I would, put the lights on a little piece of a building there and hold, a tree branch in front of the lights to kind of give it a little bit of mood, and then we shot it.
This particular shot I did myself on a second unit down in Los Angeles. This is actually out in the marina. I wanted to get a kind of sense of this being a seaside community. This was in the middle of the night with a very small unit. Again, we were piecing together images to open our film. This is actually on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. This is the Canyon Country Store that we shot in one evening.
John Strobel
That's correct.
doing his acting debut.
And this is all natural lighting, basically. We ran out with a camera, and everything you're seeing here was lit only by the lights inside the store. That's why John is standing by the refrigerator counter there, because that's the only place we had any light.
John now owns the restaurant Angeli on Melrose Avenue.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, probably richer than both you and I combined. An extended title sequence, basically to set the mood of the film. Again, Dean shot the movie. He's a fantastic cameraman. Is now one of the best in Hollywood. I believe you met Dean in your low-budget
Yeah, before Halloween, I was a script supervisor and an assistant editor and did all kinds of little stuff, and that's where Dean Cundy and I, we worked on like 9 pictures together, and then when we made Halloween, we brought him along. He worked in this thing called a movie van, and it was the size of like a Volkswagen van, and that would hold the entire grip, electrical, and camera department in this one van. And so when we started making The Fog, we actually had a big grip truck and an electric truck, but Larry Franco, our first AD, drove the Winnebago.
That's correct. So now we're still in a sequence that shot all available light. I believe there's a little bit of light on this sign as he comes around the corner.
I still have the sign.
You do?
Yeah.
And again, we're in Laurel Canyon here. Trying to open the movie with a bit of mood, which we didn't originally have. Now, this material here, all the little odds and ends are lit. I believe we had one light with us. This is a gas station that's about to light up. This is out in the San Fernando Valley. This gas station has been shot several times because it's kind of an older model from the I believe it's from the 30s. I just saw this in a TV commercial recently. And there's actually a diopter on this shot right here, which is the foreground is in focus and the background is in focus. It was kind of a fancy shot for us in those days, given the fact that we had about 5 people on the camera crew. This was all rigged up and it worked pretty well. Car goes up on the lift. Again, we are basically setting the mood of the story. These ghosts are supernatural happenings are taking place in this small town on the coast of Northern California. But basically, what you're seeing here is material that we shot after the movie was all completed, and this was shot to give the film more mood and more fear. As I recall, at the time, we were under a lot of pressure to deliver a film that was as frightening as Halloween. Mm-hmm. Halloween was a very different kind of movie. Now here we are in Tommy Wallace's house with his wife, Nancy, shooting a little sequence. She's a character in the film, and we added this at the very end. Basically, we did all this work in a month before the film had to be delivered. Again, this is primarily natural lighting. We're going to have a big sound effect coming here, and it always seems to work. Again, we're establishing mood. These clocks were shot in the small apartment that you and I were living in.
There's me as a little girl.
There you are. Now we're back in, actually, Olema, California. Now we're on Bear Valley Road. This is in one of the most beautiful areas in the entire world. It's Point Reyes, California, in Inverness. I just recently finished a movie up there called Village of the Damned, and I own a house up there and have lived there for many, many years.
We had a 30-day shooting schedule on this, and we started on a full moon and finished on a full moon. And so you'll see the full moon in the movie quite a lot.
Tom Atkins is making his appearance as a truck driver, and pretty soon he's going to pick up Jamie Lee Curtis hitchhiking. Of course, those are the old days when I guess you could get away with hitchhiking. These days you can't do it.
This is actually the epicenter of the 1906 earthquake happened right near this road. And it used to be a cow pasture, and all the cows fell into this huge crevice.
The dialogue scene that we're playing here as she gets in is shot in a garage in Inverness, California. It's a Chevron station, and when I was recently there, the owner asked me if I wanted to shoot another scene in his garage. I told him it wasn't necessary. This is called Poor Man's Process. And basically, the lights, the leaves that are moving across the windshield are on a stand, and they're being whipped by the lights behind them. And the truck is being rocked, and they're sitting completely still. This is the way you have to do it when you can't afford to mount the camera and light for night.
I think actually this is the way you should do it all the time. I mean, Poor Man's Process.
You like it better?
I think it's always, well, you can have so much more control over it. And it's, normally when you're towing a car,
That's true.
You have to light such a huge section of the road, and I think it always works.
It's very difficult at night to do a dialogue scene in a car. Basically, behind them in the window, you would be seeing the road back there, but
and perhaps other cars.
That's true. But in order to do that, you would have to light the whole thing. Now we have a little special effects sequence, courtesy of Dick Albane, and they pull over. Protecting the actors was a difficult situation when we had to do this, because we don't want to blow glass in their faces.
It's exactly 12 minutes after midnight, and this is Stevie Wayne, your night rider, around until about...
I believe the next sequence we're going to cut to the lighthouse. There it is. That's on the end of the Point Reyes Peninsula, and Adrienne is going to be inside...
which is on a soundstage now.
On a soundstage. This is, again, in Raleigh Studios.
You can't sleep.
I just recently married Adrienne at this point, and this was, I believe, her first film.
Some way to keep you occupied.
I think this is really great dialogue, too, this Stevie Wayne dialogue here. It's...
Well, you wrote part of it.
But no, I think it's one of her best performances.
I agree with you. She's terrific in the movie.
Yeah, she really is.
Chuck Cypher's playing the weatherman. meteorologist.
I changed shifts so I can make it to the big party tonight.
Again, we were in sound stages primarily here for most of the dialogue.
Until I can talk someone else into giving up city life.
The set's built by Tommy Lee Wallace, who was our production designer and also our film editor.
And we built the lighthouse set, both interior and exterior, on a soundstage. Because in the end of the movie, we practically destroy the lighthouse.
Again, in low-budget filmmaking, you have to make certain concessions that you're not able to do if you have a high budget. We had a little over $1 million, so a lot of the film has to be rather simply planned out and simply done. One of the issues we had to deal with was what kind of music was being played at the time, and we chose a kind of old-fashioned hits. Now we're...
That was a miniature, wasn't it?
That was a miniature boat. Now we're aboard a real boat with Buck Flower in the foreground and John Goff and James Canning in the background. They're hanging out. We're about to have our first attack. Originally, this scene was scripted with no overt violence, and you never saw the ghosts. But we had to go back and, as Debra said, and reshoot all this. Now we're seeing a fog bank come across the water.
Just a note, again, on that miniature, too. You have to be very careful whenever you do miniatures with water, that the water in relationship to the miniature works. And we basically shot all our own effects. We borrowed a camera from the old MGM optical department and on a weekend. And it was a registration pin camera. And we created all our own effects just like that.
The fog coming across the water is a miniature. There's a dump tank, a small tank of water, and we dumped dry ice behind it, and the fog is rising up.
So the fog is basically created 3 different ways. One with dry ice, another one with actual foggers, and a third way, I'm trying to remember how the third one was.
Now we're in the, basically the control room of the ship, and he's coming in there. This was a real ship that we shot down in San Pedro. And originally the scene was, I believe, supposed to end here, but we carried it on. That's a miniature boat in a tank with a little fog going over it. We had to be very inventive in those days. Dean Cundy's lighting is extraordinary in this. Now we're doing a reverse shot.
Yeah.
The fog is turning off the engine.
It's a generator.
This sequence was filmed later. Again, this was some of the stuff we added at the end on a sound stage. And this is down in the harbor at San Pedro with a real ship going by. The actors standing
On the dock.
on the dock. Actually, the actors are on a boat and we're going by the ship, as I recall.
Yeah, the ship is standing still.
That's correct.
Let's go. Hey, there was just a ship out.
And now the rest of the sequence here, as they turn around, is on a small soundstage out in the valley. We shot, again, this was all done in the month before we had to deliver the movie. We added this particular sequence for the spookiness and effects there. The ghosts, primarily the ghosts that you see are Tommy Wallace and a couple of the grips all dressed up in black.
Part of the problem going back and reshooting or doing additional shooting is matching everything. You know, so you have to keep the wardrobe and you have to redesign, and it takes a lot of thinking, a lot of piecing together.
And that's a graphic sequence here that was partially drawn out on paper and partially created by just a lot of coverage and cuts. Now our sailors are dispatched, and we now know there's something evil and supernatural in the fog. Now we're back to the original footage that we shot, and in comes, I believe this is Tommy Wallace back there, our production designer,
And film editor, who's now a ghost.
who's now become a director in his own right in Hollywood, and probably regrets ever having played a ghost.
Plus, he also co-wrote El Diablo with you, which we made for HBO.
That's correct. Now this is added material here again. back to the miniature, and we're on with our story. And the end of the second reel, I believe. Now we're back in the lighthouse set with Adrienne. This movie was processed by Metrocolor, which was one of the greatest labs in Hollywood, and the color was extraordinary in the film. And Avco, I believe, did the release prints through CFI, if I'm not mistaken. So we had a little bit of a battle getting it where we needed it, but the combination of Dean Cundy's lighting and photography and the lab situation really produced a beautiful film.
Also, it's very moody. You know, you talked a little bit earlier about the music in this movie, and we made Stevie Wayne have a jazz station because we couldn't afford rock and roll. It's so expensive these days. So we were able to do needle drops with obscure music that kind of added in a way to the mood.
Now, you see Adrienne smoking a cigarette during this movie. Adrienne has never smoked cigarettes, hates smoking cigarettes. So I had to kind of train her to do it. She actually does a pretty good job. She swore to me that she never inhaled it throughout the whole film, but I'm not so sure.
Why did you want her to smoke a cigarette?
I think perhaps that her character is based on a lot of the Howard Hawks women throughout his movies who all seem to smoke cigarettes, especially Lauren Bacall, who walks in the doorway, and the first time you see her, ask Humphrey Bogart for a cigarette.
My idea of perfection is a voice on the phone.
Okay, mystery lady.
Good night.
The point of view shots that you're seeing, that Adrienne is seeing here, are shot right from the lighthouse out in Point Reyes. That's a daytime shot that we have altered to make it look like night.
You actually shoot those kinds of shots when the sun is high up in the sky, you know, like straight overhead. And then you can do them a couple different ways. You can shoot them black and white and then print them on color. Or you can just put a filter over it that kind of gives you that feeling.
And Jamie Lee and Tom Atkins are in bed together. This was shot in a very small kind of house on the water in Inverness. Believe it or not, the rippling water effect, lighting effect on the window back there has to be done with a pan with a broken glass in it and water rippling over it because we couldn't get the light angle correct.
Is that where you're from? San Diego?
But pretty soon Tom Atkins is going to get up and respond to something happening in the other room, and you're going to cut from Inverness, California to, again, Laurel Canyon, to the house I was living in at the time. We came back and reshot part of this scene to make it more frightening and have more punch to it.
I don't know.
That's okay, Mimi.
Jamie's hair changed a great deal from Halloween. She had nice kind of long 17 and 18-year-old hair, and now here it is.
Well, she's so much more sophisticated in this particular role than she was as Laurie Strode.
She wanted to play a different character.
Yeah, and I think she did.
Now there we are in Laurel Canyon.
I remember that.
And then now we're back to Inverness as Tom gets out of the bed. That's back in Laurel Canyon. And back to Inverness. Laurel Canyon. Again, we shot this on a very foggy day, but had to 10 in the entire set. Now that we are in Laurel Canyon there, as he backs away from the doors. Again, this sets the mood for the film, even though it wasn't scripted originally. And the clock breaks at 1 o'clock, and the curse is over for the night. Basically, this movie is done in 3 acts: the night before, the day of, and the night of the fog attacking. That's a point of view from the actual house there on the bay in Inverness.
So until tomorrow night at 6 p.m., when KAB comes back on the air, this is
At low tide.
Correct.
hoping you have a nice rest of the night.
We fade out, and now we're into the next day. This is a very, very beautiful location. As we can see, now we're at Drake's Beach. It was, legend has it that Sir Francis Drake landed on this beach with his ships and either traded with the Indians or ripped them off or something. But it's an incredible location. And little Ty Mitchell is walking his way along the beach here. Actually, we encountered a lot of cold weather up there. It looks very sunny, but it's freezing cold. We were up there in I believe it was the winter months, as I recall, March, maybe April, I don't remember.
This is right below the area where Alfred Hitchcock shot the birds, and so it's kind of reminiscent, this feeling of that original picture.
The gold coin does a disappearing act here. We did it the cheapest possible way with a cut right there. It's cut, and now the coin is gone. And now it's aboard. Some of the genre fans criticize the writing on this film in terms of its logic about ghosts, but my feeling was if you're doing a ghost story, there really isn't too much logic to it. This is the house on Tomales Bay, right off of Inverness. Quite a beautiful place.
Well, let's talk about the Elizabeth Dane for a second, because the ship that went down, the Elizabeth Dane, is named after an old girlfriend of yours.
Kind of a combination. Elizabeth was the first name. I don't remember where we got Dane, though, Deborah. I think you wrote that part.
No, I thought Elizabeth Dane was an old girlfriend.
We track across Adrienne and an old boyfriend of yours.
And an old boyfriend of Adrienne's.
That's correct. And up comes Ty into the house and onto a set again at Raleigh Studios.
Look what I found.
I actually still have that quilt.
You do?
Uh-huh.
Sure, Mom, but look it.
I had forgotten that that's my lamp.
Do you still have the lamp?
Yeah.
So basically, we used all your furniture in the picture.
Did you have a nice time last night?
Yeah, old Mr. Macon told us ghost stories.
Again, the film is rather simply shot in terms of its dialogue scenes. We have a master and then two over the shoulders, usually utilizing the Panavision frame. Panavision is my favorite cinema aspect ratio because it's widescreen, and I feel it's the most like a big movie that you'll ever see. It's not the square screen. Now we are actually up in Bodega Bay, where Hitchcock shot the birds. This is the wharf. Right down there is the restaurant where everybody was trapped in the birds. We had one day to shoot this scene, and it's kind of an overcast day. It was a beautiful look.
Al said 7:30 right here. Well, you know, Al, if I were you, I'd give...
This is primarily a fishing area, a farm area, up in Northern California. One of the most incredible areas of all time. I fell in love with the place, so much so that I bought a house.
Make it back in. Still get a sailor to stay out there all night and not let somebody know. Sound like his wife.
A lot of production value, up here that, we didn't even have to spend dollars for.
Big time. Big time. Nice little dolly shot along the wharf. We had to bring up the dolly track and set it up. It was a rather simple shooting day, but we got a lot for our money. You can see the sky kind of clearing out there in the distance, but it's heavily overcast.
Yeah.
Now we're back in Olema. This was a restaurant called Jerry's Farmhouse, and Janet Leigh makes her appearance with Nancy Loomis. It was really fun working with Janet. She's an incredible pro, and there's one particular scene in the film where Janet has to cry, and for technical reasons, she did it 14 times in a row. And her studio training came in incredibly handy. This is a Panaglide shot. All the set dressing that you see in this parking lot was provided by Tommy Wallace.
Andy, just be civil to me for another 5 hours. That's all I ask.
The restaurant is on your right. It's still a delightful place to go to eat. It's changed a great deal, though, now.
Janet Leigh's playing the mayor of the city, isn't she? The mayor of the city who...
I believe she's a booster. I don't think she's the mayor. Don't we have a mayor that stands up and talks to them?
Oh, yes, that's correct.
She's a real estate agent or something.
That's right. She's a real estate agent who's celebrating. It's her, I guess, relatives that died.
Right.
Ancestors that died.
Beautiful shots on the Point Reyes Peninsula as Adrienne is driving her Jeep up to up to the lighthouse. This is actually the road to the lighthouse in reality. Camera is mounted on the Jeep, and Adrienne is trucking right along. This was one of our first days of shooting, an incredibly windy day, and we're giving off information here.
South from Whately, around Arkham Reef.
Sometimes the weather out there gets, the wind gusts are 65 and 70 knots. They have to close down the lighthouse or you'll be blown off the cliff. This is the Great Beach as we're panning to the left, and North Beach is on your left coming up.
5 points. If you sight this vessel, please notify the Coast Guard immediately.
Now we are out in the San Pedro Harbor, and my least favorite day of filming I can remember in my career. I got deathly seasick during this day. The script supervisor and I were in the bottom of this boat, blowing our lunch all over the place.
I don't remember this day shooting. I don't think I was out there.
You're luckily not out there. It was awful.
I think I was on the dock.
The seasick pills I took did not work. And here you're talking to a helicopter pilot who gets wimps out on a boat. The day was rough on the water. This is a Panaglide shot, which is trying to smooth out the action. Now we're back in Inverness. And we're going to do the thankless dialogue scene in the car. These are my least favorite kind of scenes to do, because you're really kind of limited in your angles, at least on a low-budget film. You have the camera mounted on the front of the car. You have three kind of choices. You can do a two-shot of the people in the car looking straight back, and then you can cross over for a close-up of the Janet and Nancy. And the other option is to then remount the cameras coming in the side windows, but you are severely limited, especially in widescreen. Later on, as the budgets increased, I began to enjoy working with rear screen. Now we're back out in the harbor. I recall this day was the worst. As you see, the boats are moving back and forth, and my stomach was moving back and forth. Debra, you were in the office returning phone calls, which I had been in the office, and you had been out on the boat.
Yeah, I don't recall this day of filming at all. But I guess we're in the story now where we're building the day before the fog comes again at that night, and parallel stories between these people.
That's right, and we're intercutting a lot of material. Now we're driving up in Inverness up a hill. There really is a church up here. We're about to cut from Northern California to Altadena, and this is the church that we found. It's very surprising they let us shoot in here due to the nature of our story. Now we're into another Panaglide shot. This is a beautiful old church. They let us break out their windows. Actually, we provided the windows, but they let us replace them. Ray Stella was operating the Panaglide and had learned how to do it on Halloween. And it weighs a lot, and his operating is really, really good.
I think, using the Panaglide on Halloween, we never would have been able to make that movie in 20 days if we had done it the traditional, lay the dolly track and, get it even and everything. It was
absolutely.
Really, and I think that's the use of the widescreen is what really makes these pictures different than other low-budget pictures of the time. It's because they get a bigger,
bang for the buck.
Yeah, plus just a bigger reality to the whole thing,
You're absolutely right about that. Now look at the beautiful lighting that Dean has done here. Here's a trick that we did. Hal Holbrook comes out and startles Janet Leigh. And originally when we staged this, you could see Hal Holbrook standing there. So we had the MGM lab work on this, and they darkened the frame back there, so you cannot see him. This is an optical, and there he is. They did a little dissolve, and out he comes. And it worked very well. We put a loud sound in there, and I remember at the Avoriats Film Festival, the entire crowd screamed and yelled. So
yeah.
We were successful.
There's a lot of tricks in here that we did with just surprising the audience and sound, and it really worked out well.
That's kind of one of the tools you have, isn't it, when you're doing a low-budget movie, is using sound effectively.
He is a rich man with a cursed condition.
Of course, though, we don't have, nowadays we mix for like 4 and 6 weeks. I mean, those days we mixed 3 days, I think, on this movie.
We did, at Ryder Sound, as I recall. Now we're in the real boat down in San Pedro Harbor again, in the control room. We had a little sequence here where
Every single gauge is broken.
Jamie discovers the body of James Canning rolling out of a cupboard, and it didn't work, so we went back and reshot part of it. It'll be coming up in a minute, and we built a set where Jamie goes down below deck and discovers the body. Made it more frightening. Again, I suppose we were wrong at the time to try to do an old-fashioned ghost story when the audience wanted to see much more overt horror on screen. We're intercutting between various characters and parts of the story. A lot of this is due to the diligent work of Tommy Lee Wallace and Charles Bornstein, who were the editors on this. The movie was really made in the editing room and structured to provide a coherent narrative.
Only for permission to settle here.
But again, we were beginning filmmakers, and we're trying our best to get on the screen what we could. There was a great deal of expectation, Debra, as I remember, on us to provide.
Well, I think one of the things I kept remembering you saying is this is going to be as scary as Halloween, because Halloween was such a surprise for us, and we were like kids. I mean, they used to think of us at Goldwyn, where we edited the pictures, where I think you still edit your movies. What are the kids up to? And that was John and myself. And
they don't call me a kid anymore. They call me old man. Now we're in a soundstage at this part of the movie. This is something that we reshot again in those final months before we released the film. As I recall, on the day we were shooting this particular scene, the revolution in Iran had just taken place, and the Ayatollah had come back and taken over.
fishing.
This is all a built set and reworked dialogue, and the lighting is rather interesting from above. The shadows are created by Dean Cundy and Mark Walthour.
actually, this boat that we built, this interior, was put on a gimbal, so it could actually slightly rock.
Which made me as nauseous as the day we went out to the harbor. Hal again is reading the diary of the lepers, I suppose, that explains what's going on. There's a secret in the diary that we don't discover till the third act. Again, a lot of this movie is based upon some of the feelings and mood of H.P. Lovecraft, who was one of my favorite writers. Now we're back to the set.
Also, we should talk about the casting of a low-budget picture. Sometimes, as we did with Donald Pleasance, we had got extra money for him. But with Hal Holbrook, we only had a little bit of money, and so we had to put all of his scenes together, and we had to build a set for him to work on. And the same thing for John Houseman, by doing his whole scene. I think that was like 6 or 7 pages in one day. And I think a typical Hollywood picture averages around 2 to 3 pages.
It's true. And everybody was frightened of John Houseman when we were on the set because he was such a powerful presence and because he's produced so many great movies. And he did swear when he blew his line, so we all felt better. Again, we're leading up to a little scare scene here as the light plays back and forth on Tom Atkins as he's telling his story. Just as the quote you suggested from Poe, we're dealing with stories within stories, and basically dealing in the area of the ghost story, the haunted town, the haunted ship.
They boarded the brig.
Kind of evocative of an earlier era in literature and movies.
There was food on the table and a hot, steamy cup of coffee. But underneath, the tin cup was...
And we're about to get a good scare here, I believe. We set it up with a little movement there on the locker. I believe once again Tommy Lee Wallace is behind there moving the door. He was basically doing everything that needed to be done by giving the audience the the visual image and the sound of that locker moving, you know something's going to happen. The question becomes, when does it happen? And there, it blows open, but there's really nothing there, we think. And behind Jamie comes the hideous shape, and now we're out of our cheap scare back to Hal Holbrook. Those kinds of scares, we sort of started doing that in Halloween and carried it on to The Fog. Nowadays, that kind of thing probably doesn't scare people anymore. Those are the old days.
It rolled in as if heaven sent, although God had no part in our actions.
It's funny to watch these movies now. They seem so innocent. And at the time, I recall, we would always receive lots of criticism for being makers of horror films. It's funny how times change.
Father had a way with words.
Our celebration tonight is a travesty. We're honoring murderers.
So here we are on our first day of shooting, and this is Adrienne driving her Jeep up to the lighthouse. And it was a very, very, very windy day. And the lighthouse is actually down these steps. The greatest shot of the lighthouse is when you're out in the ocean looking back at it, because it's on the side of a mountain. So it caused quite considerable problems in shooting it. And we ended up having to shoot a number of plates of it, and then using that to put the fog, actually marry the fog to it. What's interesting is lighthouses are run by the National Park Services around the country, and they man them. And there was actually like an elevator that goes down the steps to the side.
Top of the world, KHP 1340. 33.
We rise up over the gate here and the sign, and we reveal down at the very bottom the lighthouse. The lighthouse is not full size. It's kind of a short guy, but it's extremely beautiful.
Yeah, it's very untypical of what you consider a lighthouse, which is a very tall tower. And the tower being so tall is so other ships can see the beacon. But this is built way out on a point, and that's the reason why it's put out there.
Nice little handheld shot by Ray Stella there. This is the wind, as Debra said, is so incredible. Now we're down at the lighthouse proper. It's really beautiful. And they still have the glass and the mechanism in there, but they don't use it anymore. They have an automated light, right, as a matter of fact, there it is, rotating next to the lighthouse. And now I believe we're on our set, aren't we?
Yeah, this is the set. This is down on Melrose, and it's a 2-story set, which was kind of fun to build.
These are the steps from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which we kind of found now we're on the upper level.
And a lot of the shots that we shot looking into the lighthouse, we shot sort of at a low angle looking up, because we couldn't afford to put screens outside and stuff like that. And it's kind of a very low-tech DJ station in many, many ways.
We romanticized the idea of a radio station, putting it in a lighthouse. I thought that was a great idea.
Father, where did you find this?
And now we're back at the other set with Hal Holbrook, and a lot of these scenes have to do with the plot of the movie, reading the diary and discovering exactly what is going to happen. So we kind of foreshadow or tell the audience before the characters know what's going to happen.
I'm fond of this shot. Hal is in darkness here. He's barely lit. And Janet and Nancy are under light, but it really gives him a moody feel.
Plus, it's hard to hold focus for that depth at this light.
Oh, absolutely.
It's one of the neat things about Dean Cundy is that when we did Escape from New York, which is the next film after this, Dean also shot it. We used a Panavision camera as well, but we used accompaniment of lenses that were the first time they were ever used, and they were all, I think we lit that at foot candles rather than f-stops.
Wasn't that the Panatards?
Yeah.
The fast lenses? Yeah.
Fast lenses.
He was the first cameraman in the United States to use those.
I mean, everything was sort of shot at a 2.
So we leave Hal there, and we come back to the lighthouse. There's a fan, an E-fan on the sheets outside, and now we begin to do a little supernatural trick here. This is a kind of, again, a ghostly approach to the supernatural. They're sending a message. We come down off the dripping sign, and we're cutting back and forth. Adriana's not paying attention. The water goes to the tape recorder and begins to alter the sound, and she begins to hear something very strange on the tape recorder. A voice from Six Must Die. Again, this is in retribution for what happened in the past. Puts out the fire, and everything is back to normal again. These kinds of things are fun. They're really 19th century pulp fiction, penny dreadful techniques, but they're really fun to do in a movie.
Every hour, on the hour, KAV.
And the sound returns to normal, and now Adrienne has had a supernatural experience, which is going to color what she does in the rest of the film. Basically, our main characters pretty much have encountered very strange things. Now we're back out in that awful day in out of San Pedro. Oh,
again.
Lordy.
So there you are with the Panaglide again. And I think one of the reasons why we went with the Panaglide on this particular shot on this day was because we didn't have to bring all this equipment aboard these boats. And the boat was small, and we had as few crew members on this boat as possible.
And we're back in Inverness in the actual house. When we recently were up there making Village of the Damned, this is the house that the assistant directors lived in. A very beautiful place.
Andy, where did you get that?
Really?
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, we rented the house.
Where?
By the rocks.
What was it doing?
First it was a
So this is where Adrienne's having a conversation with her son, and she's really frightened because she knows that something's wrong, but she can't make it back in time, and so she wants them to lock the doors and don't answer if anybody knocks. And
Is Mrs. Cobritz there?
She just came in.
Mrs. Cobritz is the babysitter. Cobritz is the name that I've used from a producer that I worked with on a TV movie, Richard Cobritz. He went on to produce Christine for me, and was a very, very nice man and a very influential producer. And I decided to give him a little tip of the hat.
And that TV movie is where you met Adrienne.
That's correct.
Starred Lauren Hutton and Adrienne Barbeau. What was it called?
And David Burney, Someone's Watching Me.
That's right.
Now, I am told by radio aficionados that what she's doing in terms of turning on the microphone is completely wrong. There's a sign that says "on the air" that pops on, and I was admonished by an interviewer for not getting my technical stuff correct, but I don't think the audience minded too much.
Well, but I also think that we were trying to go for a very low-tech, old-fashioned kind of radio station. I mean, I think those were deliberate choices that we made at the time.
And I still got the tongue lashing from this fella. And we pull back from the radio, and we're in Inverness. It's an extraordinary live location. This is a very difficult shot to light because of the daylight outside. You have to pump light on the actors in the foreground. But again, Dean Cundy is kind of a master of that.
What are those clouds out there?
Boy, going to this location gave us such value. And this, once again, this is a plate. We shot fog separately and the dock separately, and we put them together, composited them together.
Again, this is some of the material we shot later on after we'd finished the movie and realized we had to redo it. This is a scene that includes Darwin Jostin. He was an actor in Assault on Precinct 13, the movie that you and I first met him on.
That's right.
And This was shot in a little small clinic, I believe, in the San Fernando Valley. We added this to add another scare into the film where this corpse comes back to life. As I remember, the corpse is John Strobel, who appeared in the first scene.
Oh, yes, I think you're right.
And he makes another appearance as a corpse.
A different character.
We kind of recycle as much as possible in these low-budget films.
Water for a month.
Yeah, I remember Darwin. He did such a good performance in Assault on Precinct 13.
Oh, it was fantastic.
He was really good. Very, very good. As a matter of fact, somebody was casting a picture not too recently. Could have been, maybe it was Joe Dante, and he called me about getting the original cast members of Assault on Precinct 13.
Oh, that'd be great. Well, again, we're setting up cinematically here that Jamie's alone in a room with a corpse, and the corpse is moving, the sheet is moving, and she's not paying attention, and the audience is ahead. First time I saw this scene as a kid, it worked, so we decided to put it back in the picture.
A year to decompose. Longer if it was down far enough.
What did you see it in as a kid?
I can't even remember now, probably The Tingler.
Decks. No. Dick Baxter died in the ocean.
That's my favorite angle in the scene, shot from underneath the gurney as the legs come down.
You remember last October, those 3 kids that went diving for that old boat off the point?
Yeah.
Again, looking at the film from our perspective now, you can see how much of it was structured in the editing room. Unlike Halloween, these scenes are done in shots as opposed to long takes, and constructed for tempo and visual impact.
Well, they're very different. I mean, Halloween was so lyrical in the way that it was shot, in terms of the way the camera moved all the time, and then we went from the shape's point of view a lot of the times. And this was really a different kind of storytelling. I mean, there was really very little story in Halloween. It was all about style, I think.
That's a really good way of putting it, too, as a lyrical movie. This is a much more dense film visually, has a lot more cuts, and then now we're seeing second unit shots all around Point Reyes.
These are ones that I did with Ray Stella, and we did them over a couple of day periods, and just to sort of set up the mood and the foggy. I mean, this is real fog here, and we'd hope to use this, that it would be rolling in. It's such a beautiful place. And we're also using this to go bridge from day to nightfall. Essentially, this shot was shot in the day, and then we used a filter for the gradation at the top.
We're back to your second unit again, with car headlights and flashlights. Very effective, I might add.
That's why when people tell me they're going to shoot second unit and they have like a DP and an operator and a gaffer and a grip, and I go, what do you need all this for?
You've done it already. You don't need this stuff. We're back in the parking lot of Jerry's farmhouse in Olema for our night scene. The mayor, I believe, that's the mayor talking, and a lot of locals were in this scene, as I recall. They were rather shocked that we connected all the parts of town they knew weren't connected. Here we have the scene I'm telling you about.
There's
Bill Taylor's in the background.
Bill Taylor back there. Bill Taylor is not an actor. Bill Taylor is actually a wonderful, wonderful camera. What do we call him? I guess special effects camera person.
That's right.
And a good magician. And he worked for many years with Albert Whitlock at Universal, who made all those incredibly beautiful matte shots.
This was the scene I was referring to where Janet had to become emotional several times in a row, and she always came through. She was absolutely fun to work with and completely professional. It was a great experience.
Can't have the chair lady of the birthday celebration in tears, can we?
I think you autograph.
Oh, I think that's...
This bar we're shooting in at the farmhouse was a favorite of the crew to come in after hours and relax at the bar and watch television or listen to country music. A great collection of Elvis statues is right over on the left, out of frame.
It's interesting how you shot this scene in one shot.
That's why it took 14 takes.
You didn't want any cuts in it?
No, I believe we had a tracking shot from here on. I don't know if we still have it. There we go.
I hope you remember it.
We come back around into a 2-shot for dialogue.
Happy 100th 100th and
This is one of the longer scenes. Now we're cutting away to a shot done over in Paramount Drive, where you and I used to live, as an intercut, and now coming back as we've dropped part of the scene.
The Coast Guard dropped me a note saying they found the seagrass earlier this afternoon. But there's no further word as to the condition of the ship.
This really was a story told in the editing room, wasn't it? I mean, now that I look back at it, haven't seen it for quite a long time.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it? We structured this whole thing throughout the summer of '79, then confronted the issue that we needed more work on the film.
Well, I can remember going out for lunch with Bob Remy and telling him that we needed more. And he said, "How much will it cost?" Remember that?
I remember.
And he said it was really worth it. Bob Remy, who's now a producer on his own, he made Patriot Games and all those big movies with Harrison Ford. He ran Afghan Embassy in those days.
He admonished us at one point. He said, maybe the problem is it's a ghost story, because people don't usually go to see ghost stories unless it's Casper. And they're friendly ghosts. Now here we have an effects shot. We've done this in two passes. One is the shot of the point that you just saw, and the other is a miniature.
We built the miniatures in black velvet on the floor of a little soundstage out in the valley, and using this registration pin camera that we borrowed from MGM, we were able to use different forms of fog, most of it being dry ice, and have the fog go in and around the crevices of the rock, of the miniature. And then when we combined the two as a composite, that's what we got. A very basic form of, of special effects photography. I mean, it's quite, nowadays, it's so much more sophisticated.
And this particular shot of Chuck Cypher's driving is one that you directed yourself, because I had an attack of a bad tooth that day. Here we have more special effects fog.
Yeah, that was a fogger. Actually, some, guy hiding in the woods.
It may have nothing to do with the seagrass.
I'm very glad you were able to direct that shot, Debra. We would have been behind schedule.
I was very nervous, John. I much prefer to do things without people in them.
We're on a set at Raleigh Studios again here. Originally, this particular character had a lot more to do with the movie, but Chuck was cut down when we did our recut on the film.
On my way. See you tomorrow. Yeah, Mel, I'll see you.
You used this actor in Someone to Watch Over Me, right?
I didn't direct that, but someone's watching me.
Someone's watching me.
I did. We used him in Assault on Precinct 13.
Oh, that's where yeah, that's right, Assault on Precinct 13. Once again, back to the fogger, special effect in the woods, and we also have the pulsating light.
Want to come?
KB.
So the movie is beginning to build to the climax here as we connect all our characters with the legend of Elizabeth Dane and the ghosts, lepers that are coming back, and everyone is involved. The ghost fog is attacking the town, and pretty soon things are going to start to happen.
And Stevie Wayne becomes sort of the voice that tells the town what's going on and warns everybody that something's about to happen.
Tommy Atkins did his own driving stunt there in that old truck. Of course, the truck wouldn't go very fast, probably about 20 miles an hour. We're on Bear Valley Road, panning off.
Dan, are you still there?
I'm still here. Hey, you,
That's another problem with low-budget movies, is that when you have vehicles, you don't normally have mechanics that can keep them in running condition. I know when you did Christine, you had like 5 or 6 different models, plus you had all these mechanics on staff all around the clock, so that every day the car was running. We couldn't afford that kind of stuff on this movie.
I had 10 times the budget we did on this one, Debra.
Yeah.
This was a very, very low-budget film. That's a special effects shot with miniature fog over a real shot of the bay. And in the background, we began to see the fog creeping up on Charles Cypher's. There we go. And that's a fogger in the background, goosing in the billowing fog. It makes a great deal of noise. As I recall, we had to loop some of Chuck's performance here. the lights go out, and he's about to buy the farm. We reshot part of this scene on a set again in that last month before release because we felt that there wasn't enough punch to the scene.
Shining a light through the window.
Dan, listen to me.
Hold on, sweetheart. I want to check this out.
Dan!
He leaves the phone off the hook so Adrienne can hear everything that's going on. It's a kind of an old technique of movie making. Now the knock on the door. Again, this is all very reminiscent of old movies from the 40s and 50s that I grew up watching. And the fog comes under the door. Reminds me a whole lot of The Crawling Eye.
Yeah.
It was one of my
Crawling
favorite
Eye.
films.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones too.
Except we didn't have the big eyeballs with tentacles, didn't we? So Chuck is going to open the door and buy the farm here. This particular shot here was done later. Rather effective as he's looking out.
Hello? Anybody here?
Sometimes you're not sure what you're going to need. Now we have our horror scare coming in. I believe that's Tommy Wallace again is standing in as a ghost.
Well, when we went back and did some additional reshooting, we had Rob Bottin do some close-ups of ghosts.
Wormface was Rob Bottin's, yeah.
Yeah.
Wormface is coming up soon. It's actually a puppet that Rob built. Rob came to us and wanted to work on the film. He plays the head ghost in the ending scene. It's always fun to see Rob do that.
But at the time, Rob Bottin had done nothing, and he went on to become one of the big special effects people. I think he's even won Academy Awards, and he did The Thing for you.
That's right. He won an award for Total Recall, as I recall.
And so all of us.
We're back to the location shooting. Extremely cold night. The time we were there in Inverness, the weather was very, very cold. There are a lot of locals sitting in the audience there who loved participating.
I think they particularly liked it because of Janet Leigh. I mean, she was the most famous thing in the area at the time.
And as I remember the night we were shooting that, the owner of the restaurant wanted us out, so we had to send Janet Leigh over to placate him until we finished shooting. And she was a trooper. She went right on with it.
So we must redouble our efforts.
This guy that pops in here to tell the sheriff the message that the fog is coming is Barry Bernardi, who started out in Halloween with us as our craft service person. He's actually in Halloween. The red truck by the train crossing is his, and he's the dead body.
That's right. He's now a producer.
Yeah, he went on to become our associate producer on Escape from New York, and he was the location manager here. This is done by, Fogger, special effects guy.
All miniatures here, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So now we're setting up that the town is getting cut off, communications getting cut off, so Adrienne will be the only one who's able to speak to everyone.
I mean, that's traditional horror film stuff, too, which is to break out communications, and so therefore, the army can't come save you or whatever. This is shot, actually, over here in Los Angeles, near Altadena or something, right?
That's right.
And it's Transformer. We went out there for half a day of work of location.
We're having to blast the fog in there because of the wind outside.
Yeah, I remember this effect. We couldn't get this effect to really work very, very well, and I think we made a compromise on this. I think he wanted it to be sucked into this machine, and that effect to happen. Once again, this is a plate of all the lights going out. I think that was done by a little miniature with miniature pin lights.
Mm-hmm. And now we're in the dark.
We should all proceed.
And I think what she's doing is she's telling them to go home and, be safe and disband.
A lot of the residents are still living up there. A lot of the folks that you see in the shot. And we're closing in on the last act of the film here. We're into it. Now this is more special effects shots. We really had an ambitious amount of effects in this movie. I actually operated this shot as she ran down, as I recall, and did a
She's trying to
so-so job.
She's trying to start an emergency generator here.
That's right. It's great kind of moody lighting. Now, as I recall, Deborah, that when the fog seeps into this particular location, we did that actually live, and it turned out extremely well.
Well, we were going to do it as a miniature, and then when we shot this as a plate, it just really, really worked out very, very well. We didn't have to shoot it as a miniature.
This is on a soundstage. They're driving up, actually, across the soundstage. The doors to the outside of Melrose Avenue are just a few feet away from the back of the truck. And here we are again in Tomales Bay in this beautiful little house.
One of the nice things about Dean Cundy's lighting is that the blacks are always so dark. I mean, that's one of the things that you look for when you shoot, when you're looking for a cameraman for especially night work. And, you know, we certainly shoot a lot of our movies at night. Halloween took place all in one night. This is a lot of night. Escape from New York was all in one night. And I think that the fog worked out so well here because it was a very cold night and the fog stayed close to the water and didn't dissipate into the air.
It was very effective. Now she's alerting the town. We're back on location with a tented-in window. We shot this in the daytime, and the fog back there is being controlled by technicians. We're cutting around from various locations, sets.
Building tension.
Someone listen to me! My son is...
And essentially everybody's going to get on the road and all head up to the church, which is where she tells them all to go. Of course, only our principals show up at the church.
A low-budget movie.
Right.
Are your windows all closed?
We're going to have a little death scene here. Pretty soon, Mrs. Coberts bites the dust.
Is she the 6th? 5th?
I can't remember now.
And she sends little Ty off someplace to his room, I think, right? And then she opens up the door. It's the one thing I've learned. If there's a knock at the door and it's at night, you don't open the door.
Especially if there's fog outside.
That's right. Mrs. Coberts is sending Adrian's son away to safety, and she's going to go out and investigate this. And the fog out there is being made by a fogger.
I believe we enhanced this particular scene with some of our later shooting.
I think this was the first time we used the fog effect, too.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Go to your room. I want to see who it is. No. Can't I stay for 2
They're shot right on location and building up tension.
There's a tent outside the front door there.
There he is. There's the ghost.
Originally there was one ghost when we added this little ending section. That is a miniature fog around the cabin on the Tomales Bay.
Now, once again, that was built on a soundstage and draped in black velvet.
We're intercutting various locations here.
Please, my son is trapped.
These are the basic forms of composite photography that we do now. You know, that used to be done then. And everybody's racing to the church. And right now, the ghost is coming in after the little boy, but Adrianne's character has reached out. If anybody's around my house, go save my little boy, and that's why they pull in. And
Tommy Lee Wallace again is coming through the door. He's always coming through doors and closets. He played the Shape a couple of times.
Yeah, and Halloween. Yeah, especially up in the closet scene.
I believe Ty is going to get rescued here in a second by Tom Atkins and. Through the candy glass window, and in comes Tommy to get him, but misses. And off we go. And there is the miniature shot, the miniature fog, and the live location. This is the old stuck in the mud sequence. We jacked the truck up, and we're assuming that Jamie cannot drive this truck, which is a good assumption.
That was done with a light gag behind the ghost in order to silhouette him.
They're being surrounded. We're shooting from various locations here. One is in the garage of the service station out there in Tomales Bay, and the point of views, as I recall, were also shot there, surrounding the truck, and they back out on location. Extremely well-constructed sequence by Tommy Lee Wallace in the editing room. That's fog put over the shot in the foreground. We were really running by the skin of our teeth in this film, but that's what happens in a low-budget movie. This is real fog in foreground was created there at the moment, and you see it dissipate in real life. And we're back to the Olema location by the ranch house. You see very, very simply that a lot of these sequences were shot in very few shots, either wide shots or over shoulders, except
I am,
for the
right
action
back
scene.
there as an
There
extra.
you are, Debra. You're talking to somebody back there.
Yeah, probably Barry Bernardi. No, I don't know who that is.
Another effects shot.
Well, I think this one was done as a plate with the glass in front of it, and then we shot through the glass up on the hillside and then added the fog in afterwards.
Adrienne did a great job with this particular sequence here. She's very emotional about her son, doesn't know whether he's alive or not. This was before we had our boy, and but she did a great job with it. And now we're on to another reel. Coming down Bear Valley Road. As I recall, this is the infamous Reel 9. When we were finishing up the movie, there was one reel that no one had touched that needed to be cut, and it needed to be done right away, so I sat down and spent a whole night recutting it. And it was a thankless, bleary task, but we got it done. This particular sequence here where the fog comes down the street towards the truck was shot in reverse. Because of the wind, the fog would not come toward us. Here it comes. This is a reverse shot, and the truck had to be backed up in reverse. So what you're seeing is the fog gathering. Now this truck is actually going forward at this point, so everything is reversed.
I can remember shooting that. That was actually really interesting, the way you apply the logic, reverse the logic, and you get the thing to work. We actually only shot in this town one night.
I didn't like us too much, but we're intercutting a location scene with a shot on a poor man's process, and we're intercutting all our characters for the final confrontation with the ghosts, and the man basically responsible for all the goings-on, the priest. This is the famous Reel 9 that no one wanted to recut. All the characters are gathering together. Now we're back in Altadena at the small church, and this is up on Mulholland Drive. A lot of our intercuts here are pieced together from material that we shot on location and material that we shot later. We're actually going up a hill now in Inverness and cutting to Altadena. It was all fairly well planned out, but again, we created a great deal of this in the editing room.
Well, part of the reason why we cut back and forth like this is because from Olema to Altadena is because we couldn't take Hal Holbrook on location with us. It would have been more expensive to do that, so we put all of his scenes here. He actually never leaves the church.
That's a live location that we shot one night in
That's up in Inverness.
Inverness, cutting with the church in Altadena.
So their POV is 400 miles away.
Here comes the fog. We're going to be cutting into our set again. One of the first times I used two cameras was in a scene coming up. Didn't do a very good job. I wasn't sure how to do it, but two angles on one scene. We actually happened to have a second camera.
You know, that scene in there is sort of reminiscent of the scene in Assault Precinct 13 when they're at the police station waiting for the attack. You know, it's kind of very Howard Hawksish.
I recycled all Hawks' films, Deborah. Now, this is an effects shot that was rather well done. It's a shot of the hillside, and we're dumping miniature fog over a black velvet set. And in a minute, you'll see a live shot where the fog covers camera. That's an extremely windy day. We were lucky to get that particular shot. And here's the two-camera setup that I did, where there's a lot of overlapping dialogue. And I actually had to make the cut from one to the other. Camera tracks into the door. And we're back into Altadena.
Over by the window?
It can do us no good now.
The movie originally was had a much different ending, but we because of the market at the time and because we wanted to come out with a frightening film, we worked it a great deal. A very nice little miniature shot. Now we're back into Raleigh Studios. This is a full-size miniature, and the ghosts are at the gate, coming in to get Adrienne. She's going to eventually end up on another set that we built the top of the lighthouse, which was done again that last month before we had to release the film.
Yeah, so we actually intensified the tension here with the fog and her battle with the ghosts at a later date.
A great deal of the plot is discovered in this particular scene in the overlapping dialogue. Now looking back on it, it seems to be a little gobbledygook, but a lot of ghost stories are.
That's my hand.
That's right, and you're the stand-in for Janet Leigh. We shot an insert at that point to cover some dialogue that we wanted to bridge over and emphasize that the book had the answer to all the problems of the characters. In the background there is Tommy Wallace, I think, again, coming through the set.
Get rid of that!
Tommy was a close friend of mine since 4th grade and came out to California with me to USC, and I think he probably regrets our association after having put on that black makeup and the rags and worked for hours at a time being a ghost. And he's shoving through the door, and that's his hand also, and that's his hand also. He's really a handy ghost to have around. This is the barricade scene. Two things are happening at once. The ghosts are coming in, and the answer is being sought by Janet Leigh and Hal Holbrook. And Adrienne is getting attacked by
Tommy Wallace.
Tommy Lee Wallace. The gold cross was a touch from the script. The cross eventually turns into what we referred to as the atomic cross, done with light bulbs and.
Well, the idea of the whole at this point is that the gold that was taken from the ship after it crashed was made into this cross and hidden, and these ghosts have come back for what was rightfully theirs. And so there'll be a confrontation between Hal Holbrook and the sort of lead ghost.
He's playing that cross is heavy. It actually is extremely light, and he's doing a good job of making it seem heavy. That's Tommy actually grabbing his wife's hair and attacking her. And off goes Hal to sacrifice himself for the betterment of mankind. The redemptive quality of his character was something I think that appealed to him. Although, as I recall, Hal didn't like the movie too much when he saw it. But such is life. Now, Adrienne is on a set in Raleigh Studios. I believe I operated this particular shot with the ghosts on one side and Adrienne on the other. It's really beautiful lighting by Dean. Hal is in the sanctuary and is about to confront Rob Bottin and some extras dressed in black.
It was very interesting how we did this lighting effect on this cross. It was actually done with, I guess we painted on something called Scotch-Brite. And when you reflect light onto the Scotch-Brite, it creates a color and glows. And that's how we made it to glow.
Rob Bottin made a little mask on this lead ghost as he's walking. That's him walking down the aisle. He's a tall guy anyway, and he he created a mask that would glow. Here's Adrienne on the set that we were referring to earlier. This was built after we'd finished the movie.
Those are my hands and my feet. I was doubling for Adrienne on certain shots.
This is the Alfred Hitchcock North by Northwest sequence. I believe, again, Tommy Lee Wallace is rising up the ladder, and Adrienne is scrambling at the very top. We built this set on a soundstage and shot it at the very last minute. Hal is confronting Rob Bottin there. Now, Rob has a mask on that has the front screen material that glows, and that's controlled by a light off through a mirror. And now their confrontation. I thought Rob made an excellent Ghost. And offers up the gold to give back to the ghosts and redeem himself.
Take me.
And thereby hopefully saving the town and the world. Adrienne is again crawling. We're coming up to a worm face in a minute. But first, Tommy's going to come up the ladder. I always wondered why Tommy never wanted to make any more horror movies.
Well, you know what?
Because he was.
I don't think we even paid Tommy to be in this movie as an actor.
And he'll never let us forget it.
Whoa. My hands and feet again.
We shove the camera down the set toward the ghost. Here comes Wormface as Adrienne lashes out. And Rob Bottin's beautiful mask with a couple of worms in it. It really worked out well. The audience was totally disgusted by what they saw, which was our intent at the time. This is shot from the rafters of the set, looking straight down. The camera was nailed to a board.
That's a great shot. I forgot about that shot.
Now, here's the atomic cross that we're talking about, which was done with the front screen material, and a lot of lights in the background on Hal. It was very, very hot. We're drawing the climax to a close. Kind of the trapped on an electric current there, and Hal is burning up from the lights. But Tommy pulls him off the cross just as Adrienne is about to get it. Always looks a great deal better when you're looking at it from the perspective of years later. We cranked the light up all the way at this point, and to give us a big bang here at the very end. And it fades out, and then they're gone. It's a kind of a cheap trick, but we played it off later with Hal's epiphany at the very end.
Well, it's also very reminiscent of Hitchcock's The Birds, when suddenly the birds are gone and everything is quiet and still and, peaceful again.
Like I say, we just keep recycling these old movies. Now we bring the story down to a quiet moment. The audience thinks that it's over with. We spent about the last 90 minutes setting up an attack of the ghosts, and now we're going to take them away. A lot happens in supernatural stories that the unexplained really comes and affects your lives and then goes away. And we were applying that to kind of an old-fashioned Lovecraftian idea. Adrienne looks around to see that the ghosts, in fact, have disappeared, and she's saved once again. A lot of this was constructed in the editing room, taking moments and shots from other places and put together to give it the sense of completion, to give the dramatic sense that everything winds down.
But I think, what happens is this character then goes on the air and sums it up for us in sort of a very moral way.
She does, and Adrienne gives the keep watching the skies scene from The Thing.
Right.
As we come out and...
from the original Thing.
That's correct,
right.
Not mine.
That's right.
Everything is quieting down, everything is gone, it's all peaceful again. All our main characters apparently have survived. Unfortunately, Hal Holbrook doesn't really make it, but we're letting the wind take away the fog on that windy night we were talking about earlier. As you see, this is a forward shot. If you printed this in reverse, the effect would be quite different. This is Point Reyes Station, the main street. we're back to all the locations that we've been to in the film, kind of summing up the feelings. Now we're back out on the lighthouse location, and
which is what you did in the end of Halloween also, if
That's
you went
right.
back to all the different locations.
and Adrienne is giving her final speech.
In one moment, it vanished.
Do you think maybe we should make a sequel?
I'm ready when you are.
And if we don't wake up to find ourselves safe...
Ghost stories are hard to do. This movie was very difficult, at least for me as a director, but I'm very happy with the way it turned out. It's had a great cast, it had a great look to it, and with the means that we had to make the film, Debra, I feel we really came through.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a classic and it's very different from Halloween. I think you did a great job.
And you.
Thanks.
And now Hal is going to get his just desserts. He was rather nervous about this particular sequence because Rob Bottin is Blake, and he's holding a real sword, and actually takes a big swing at Hal to decapitate him, and we had to use a long lens and keep Rob at a certain distance, and it's one of those things where you think something's very simple, but it turns out to be rather complicated.
And it's timing. It's all about the timing here.
We again use our last trick in the film. I think at this point the audience knows what's coming. Here's our shot where Hal comes in and reacts. There's a slight moment we stole when the camera was rolling. Now we have our swing, and the movie is over. And we run the credits. We redid the music. We redid the credits. We redid parts of the film.
Oh, that's who, Elizabeth Solly. That's your ex-girlfriend.
That's right.
It wasn't Elizabeth Dane.
That's right. One of the first loves of my life. A lot of the names here, Dick Baxter and Dan O'Bannon, are
Nick Castle.
People that I went to
Sandy
school
Fidel.
with. Tommy Wallace was played by Buck Flowers, an actor I've used many times, Mrs. Kobritz. But to wrap up, I think looking back on the movie now, I'm extremely proud of it. I'm glad we did it, and it has turned out to be a kind of a minor classic in the horror genre, and it was great to do, and it was great to sit here with you today and talk about it.
Yeah, it was really fun.
We'll see you guys at the movies, and take it easy.